Well, it's that time of the week again, and for this time, it's our inaugural episode of the One Tap Gaming Podcast. My name is Solemn, and joining me today are my lovely co-hosts. I've got Rums. Rums, what's going on today, bud?
What's up, everybody? How are we doing?
And of course, I have the Smithel. Smithel, what's going on, bud?
Hey, happy Thursday, or whatever day you guys are listening to this.
That's right, that's right. So today is Thursday, August the 20th. We've got some pretty interesting things to talk about, jam-packed full of information. We delayed the cast a couple days and managed to get some pretty good news out of it. So to start off, though, I want to hear about your guys' week. Rums.
I am the culprit of the delay. It was my birthday on Tuesday, and I am the reason that our cast was delayed. So for all you listening out there, you're welcome for getting this a couple days later than what's originally scheduled. But you know what? We make it work.
Unacceptable. How dare you have a birthday?
That's all right. But yes, happy birthday. Rums is now officially the baby. 22, 23, something. Smith, you had a pretty good week, pretty busy week.
Yeah.
I saw in the Discord.
I mean, yeah, it's just general life busy, but apart from that, played a little bit of Valorant, did a lot of Final Fantasy 14, kind of got sucked in pretty deep there. I will say, in regards to Valorant, Deathmatch, I am on the firm believer side that the op should not be in Deathmatch. I hate that so much. There's nothing worse than like spawning and just immediately somebody seeing you're done, just opping you and you're done. So
yeah, it's understandable.
Please just take the op out of Deathmatch. Everything else is fine.
We can get to that. That actually alludes to our topic coming up soon. My week was pretty good. Busy week at work, and I recently had some family move back into town, so the adjustment schedule and things to things along that nature. Busy week at work. Got some games in. Got a lot of Valorant in. Not as much as I'd like, but I got some in. Shout outs to chat going down and breaking the party system for like an entire night that I set aside to play. So
that was rough.
Cool.
That was a long downtime too. Typically, Riot's pretty
was
quick about those downs and bringing it back up.
Yeah, but it was good. I got my girlfriend moved into grad school. She settled down there, so all the time to research, I guess, now. But moving on into what's going on today, it's our topic of the week. We got some news to start you off with the patch notes that got dropped today, 1.06, and a couple of Valorant articles that they kind of come out with the news, hit registration, a Q&A, some other things like that. And then the meat and potatoes of today's show is we're going to talk about the operator, everybody's favorite or least favorite weapon in the game, and what's going on with it, and why it's so different than the op in CSGO. So Smith, what you got going for me today for news of the week?
Let's talk a little bit about patch note, guys. Luckily, we were able to delay the podcast, and we got hit with a patch. And granted, it's a small one. It's not super meaningful in regards to what it brings to the table. There is, one visual change in regards to Phoenix and his curveball and Breach's flashpoint. So you get a little bit better of an indicator as to when to turn away. Essentially, how not to blind your team, which is good. But the big one, and I think we're all kind of happy to see, and or at least I think so, because none of us are Jet mains, I don't believe.
Rums is a Jet main.
I am a Jet main.
Dirty Jet main. I don't think I've ever seen you play Jet. I've played a lot of games with you, and I don't think you've ever
That's
been
all
on
I play.
Jet.
That's all I play.
That's all he's been
I don't
playing.
know what the hell I'm paying attention
last
to.
2 weeks.
Well,
last 2 weeks is mainly.
Then I'm not paying attention. That
I Jet main, and I don't use my microphone. That is the move.
But yeah, so basically they essentially nerfed the spread for shotguns whenever you're in the air and firing with them. So it went from a 0.5 to a 1.25. So you don't have the jets or the raises kind of jumping all over the place and just doming you with shotguns.
To my detriment.
To your detriment.
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty important change, primarily for the shorty. So the shorty was a really good eco weapon
Shorty
at 200.
was so strong.
And you could hold corners really aggressively on defense and try to just like steal a weapon on an eco round. And being able to not like jump over the box in mid split and dome someone as they come up and cross. Trying the little one stack on the left.
The one stack on the left, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's actually more pertinent nerf than you may think. But I didn't realize. So Korea, I don't know if you know this, on the Korean Valorant they do a before and after every time they do a patch when they change stuff.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like link videos.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize how tight the judge spread was until I saw the before and after.
Yeah.
Because you were like jumping and then hitting a bullseye in the range target.
Yeah.
From like 10 meters away.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's absurd.
It's
there's no reason
tight.
for that.
Yeah, there's been times I've missed with the judge where I'm like, I'm 2 feet away, I shouldn't have missed. It's a shotgun, and you're like, oh no, wait, it's a real close quarter spread here.
Yeah, so I think this is a very healthy change. It's something that they need to be looking at more often.
Agreed.
The shotguns seemed a little overtuned, which is okay. I'm fine with things being overtuned and falling back and like playing with the range a little bit. I would like to see the Bucky's price increased to 1,000 or 1,100, and the Judge increased to 2,000.
I would
as
agree
a
with that.
mid-range buy weapons because I think they're too aggressively costed for eco, which inspires this kind of aggressive meta we've kind of placated ourselves in.
I mean, I could get on board with the judge, not. I mean, the Bucky. I don't think I want to see the judge go up in price because I mean, it's not that great of a weapon unless you're real close, and there's a lot of ways to kind of play around somebody with the judge.
There is. I just think it's a little too. I think it's too effective at 1500.
It is, and I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's such an eco weapon. It's so cheap, and the amount of effectiveness. I mean, yeah, with the spray nerf, the jumping spray nerf, yeah, it's gonna help. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you can still hold that tight corner super aggressively, and it's gonna be a lot better. I just think it's worth more than 1500.
I do like the polarity that the game has created, though, between the eco rounds, specifically with the way shotguns are played. Most of the eco guns that are good in this game are very close quarters oriented. So these angles and things that you have to take on offense or in defense with things like rifles or the standard operator play, you really have to morph how you're playing on an eco round, whether you're anti-eco on the offensive side and just trying to run in, or kind of taking these weird corners
It
on
makes you think
defense.
about it. It makes you think about your play.
Yeah, and that's something that this game I think is doing pretty well.
Well, I don't know why people complain. The eco round, you get the best gun in the game with the stinger.
Oh yeah,
That's all
that's
you
right.
need to win.
It's filthy memer. So you mentioned Phoenix's flash. So the weird tail thing, or the way it's currently behaving on live, if you're listening to this within the next few days, they're having to fix. So the flash isn't actually functioning as intended. It's a little too strong. It's behaving a little too, what is it, overtuned than they actually wanted it to come out. So they're actually going to apply a hot fix in the next couple of days. So we'll see exactly the perfect stance they wanted it to be. But yeah, the new animation is strange as a Phoenix player. I've got to get used to it, but we'll see what the changes is once they finalize it.
I haven't played Phoenix since the patch. What's it feel like, Saul?
So right, okay, so Phoenix's old pop flash when you like go out of smoke,
Sure.
you mainly are choosing these different angles between like how you're throwing the curveball, whether you're going to hit it to the left or the right, in order to take an advantageous position when you exit your smoke. So you can throw it to your right, exit with your back to the left, and you're not flashed as you peek with your flash. So then your opponent gets kind of caught off guard in this aggressive
Of course.
swing tactic. It's like double swinging with a partner, but the new tail swings farther out. The flash almost travels twice as far in the same amount of time. So now all of my like placements that I had figured out and the play that I had worked around is slightly different in the way that it works, but it's still giving you the same flash time. But I will say that I really like the difference when it comes to my teammates. So the new animation gives your teammates a ton of time to go, oh, my Phoenix flashed and didn't tell me because they're bad. They get to look away from the flash. And the same thing I think is happening to Breach. They tooled his flash a little differently so you can't catch your opponent or your teammates off guard, which is, I don't get to troll Smithle on our ranked games, but
I mean, it's good for when you go into solo queue and you don't know if like your whole teammate has mics or anything like that, and they have to play just around the in-game queues. So
I think it's an intelligent change that I didn't think about. But it's interesting. I'd like to see the flashes be a little bit stronger in this game, but I don't know how to tweak that without breaking it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how this change affects the pro play as well. With the longer timing of the Phoenix flash, you definitely can't peak your own flash as Phoenix as you perhaps might have before. You see Sabrosa doing that all the time where he peaks his own flash. I don't think that's going to be as viable, and I'm not sure if that was an intended change that Riot had.
I don't know. I think it makes a more traditional flash feel to it though,
Sure.
which may slow down the aggressive meta that we're seeing right now, which we'll
Super
get to
aggressive
in just a
meta.
little while. Yeah, and we'll get to that in just a little while. So some other news, they had a couple of other articles that they posted. Specifically, there's a Q&A that I kind of wanted to address and talk about. This seemed a little bit of a clap back kind of a Q&A where Morello kind of silenced a bunch of people who were complaining about some abilities in the game, specifically in regards to Raze and Killjoy. So a while back in early development, someone had said on a tweet, I think it was one of the developers, they said, in Project A, abilities won't kill. And a lot of people took that to mean as there's no damaging abilities in the game, and that's just not true because Raze and Killjoy, as we have seen, they were in development pre-announcement for the game. Like they had them planned and locked in and ready to go. And Morello's kind of come out with a stance in this Q&A where he's talking specifically about using damage as utility instead of a replacement for your weapon.
Which is true, because I mean, you think about it. If you're playing Raze, how often are you throwing your grenade really just to like flush somebody out of a corner? Like if you don't have that shot, you're just saying, okay, I need you to move because I don't want to like dry peek it, or I don't want to give you that
Exactly.
angle.
And that's what it's intended for.
And I think, and Morello goes in to say this, you have to use damage. You have to have some sort of threat gen for the enemy to make that ability viable. If you don't have some sort of damage, the enemy's not going to respect your abilities. And no matter what you do, your abilities will mean nothing if they don't mean some sort of harm to you. Oh, that's going to hurt. That might kill me. I have to get the hell out of the way. So you have to use damage. It's not designed to kill. It's designed as a threat generator.
Right. And I think that that's a very good design choice because you see frag grenades and things like CS:GO and Rainbow Six. The lethal
Right.
grenade slot we've seen in most FPS games. Nobody's ever complained, oh, well, that Semtex kills me in one hit. There's a range to it, there's a blast radius, all kinds of stuff. And they've already retweaked the rocket launcher and blast radius.
Yeah.
So
All it was is if they would have just phrased it differently, there wouldn't have been a big uproar. But
yeah, I think it was just a slip up on Twitter.
Morello did go on to say that the employee was like, I don't know if he was reprimanded. I'm pretty sure he was reprimanded or just corrected.
Like just watch your words. Don't say it will never do it and things like that. But I mean, and when we talk about abilities too, the other part of the article that I thought was kind of interesting was the whole "what is off limits" question that they essentially asked, and basically they said things that are like going to give a character maximum health or increase maximum health, or something that replaces guns as an ability that isn't an ultimate, like they gave Jetta Race as the example, is typically a no-go, which I think is a good choice. Like, I'd hate to see somebody that gets essentially a free gun every round, or a gun really cheap as an ability. But the one thing that I kind of thought was interesting when they said, hey, typically characters that get maximum health as a perk, part of me was like, well, Reyna, you kind of get that.
Sort of. So it's a different feel to it. So I think what they're specifically talking about is something like a combat stem that increases your max health. So think like, I'm going to give myself an extra 50 shields so I have 200 health. Because then the gameplay becomes that operator that you have is no longer one shot, which is what they want it to function as. That Vandal one tap no longer exists, And they want to avoid that because they want to keep this TAC FPS high consequence gun, gun combat and gunplay. That's what I'm looking for. They want to keep that the core focus and mechanics of the game. And I think you notice this a lot. A lot of the times when these Overwatch players, Rainbow Six players, and some other players coming into the game from other genres and other FPS games, they're really taking it like, oh, these utilities are really strong, they're really useful. I need to use them as frequently as possible. I need to expend these usages, and they aren't focusing enough on using their rifles as a resource. And I think that's a detriment to a lot of their gameplay, is they're thinking that they need to be lethal with their kit instead of using their kit to help their lethality. And I think that's what they're trying to touch on with their no-go, like no-fly zones. I think the rest of it is like anti-cheat on that article, which is hot. They gave us a number, which is cool.
Yeah, essentially they basically said, hey, we don't, like, there is a number, but they're not going to release, I assume, the number of how much their computer has banned. But they
They
say,
just don't know.
yeah, they did say, which was cool, though, is that they've done like 1,800 manual bans.
Yes.
Which is a significantly larger number than I thought was going to be for manual reviews to ban accounts.
This makes me so happy as a former CS player, because I did play CS for a little while, and man, there are just on natural game servers there are just so many cheaters. And then like looking at the current pandemic and Warzone,
Well, what made me happy was that it's them saying, like, look, we're not just relying on our software to pick up the cheaters. We're really taking into account maybe there's something that we missed, or there's something that our program's not picking up, and it lets them really continue to investigate and expand upon that program. So it's in the long term just going to make everything better and get us more fair games.
the last article that we wanted to talk about was I think this was about a week and a half ago now. They had a hit registration article that they talked about, which is that they really talked about being focused on the correct implication of their hit registration system, which is that no matter what you're shooting at, their priority is that you get the accurate response, and that what they're trying to alter and fix is the clarity of that response towards your client based off of the way that their netcode works, which without getting into the technical mumbo jumbo, they're basically saying sometimes you'll get a headshot animation or something that looks kind of like a headshot animation if you play without the blood and gore turned on, when in reality it was a body shot on the server side. And so you get the correct response from the server, but not necessarily on your client. And I think that explains a lot of the frustration that some people have had where they go, "Oh, that was a headshot. How is that not a headshot?" Especially with crouching. And it kind of eases some people out of that.
Yeah, it's nice because they give like frame by frame examples of like notice where the where the pointer is whenever he clicks, and then notice when the tracer round comes out where the pointer is, and then look at it compared to this way, and so it really helps identify of, oh, okay, here's why I'm seeing what I'm seeing.
For sure. And if you guys catch this podcast on YouTube, the links for all these articles will be listed in the description down below the video. After you hit the like button, it is a requirement you hit the like button in order to get to the description. It's a new feature that YouTube implemented for you to access the articles. They didn't tell you about it, but they told us about it, so I'm telling you about it. But that's really about it. It's a really long technical article. I don't want to delve too much time onto that because it's a lot of explanations on how networks work, which I find interesting, but you guys might not find very interesting, of me nerding out about computers for a little while. The next big chunk of this show, though, now we've talked about these articles and this news, is the operator dominance that is showing off in Valorant right now. This is a very big controversy, I guess, that's going on currently. There's a lot of players that think the operator is just fine, it doesn't need to be touched, and characters need to be changed. Some people think it's a utility problem. Some people think it's a usage of utility problem. Like there's already enough in the game to combat it. And other people just think that the operator needs some kind of alter to it so that it's not as overbearing. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Rums, you're a jet main. You're a main off when we queue. What are your thoughts on this operator dominance meta going on right now?
I think there is utility to combat it in a certain amount of time in a round. However, unless you have some utility that will recharge to continuously combat that op angle, you're not going to be able to fight it as effectively as other weapons. You're just not. Omen is a great example for someone who can continuously counter the op angle since he recharges his smoke. But if you have a Brim as your primary smoker, you can't do what Omen can and continuously smoke off that op angle because Brim smokes are entirely too valuable to not use on executes.
Correct. So it's almost like pigeonholing you in a way if you pick Brim as your main smoke.
Right. And I think we've seen a lot where there's Brim and Omen getting picked both because Omen has that continuous long angle smoke. I don't think the operator by itself is necessarily too strong. I think the operator is doing what the developers intended in that it's a very punishing one-shot, one-kill weapon, and I think that's how the operator should be. It's not inherently difficult to use if you have good mechanics, but it is something that if you do your mechanics correctly and you land your shot, you're going to get a kill. I think a lot of people are going to complain about what kills them more often than not. So when the operator kills them a lot, they're going to be inclined to say, yes, the operator is OP. The operator kills me all the time. The operator is this. The operator is that. However, there are ways to get around it that are currently in the game, but I just don't think that there's enough of that utility to be able to fight it for the entire round. Because if you get a smoke, you just have to wait the 15 seconds. As an operator, I just have to wait out the 15 seconds and then I could re-peek.
Right. I'm inclined to agree with you. And especially with the minute 30, there's obviously a lot of variables that go into whether you repeak or go through the smoke or reposition and all kinds of stuff. But I get that sentiment with the smokes. It buys a lot of time for the attackers. I think we're actually in a unique position where the three of us have a different argument for this discussion because you think that it's a utility problem, and I know Smith just thinks that the operator is too powerful, and I'm in the camp that some agent changes need to be had, and then some utility needs to be readjusted within the game to make it feel more natural when combating this off. So Smith, I want to hear your position because you've had some interesting thoughts on this topic outside of the podcast that we've talked
Yeah,
about.
so I mean, and there's a lot of kind of things that I could probably talk about in regards to my feelings on the op. Is I get that it's a one hit, one kill kind of gun. Like I'm okay with that. My issue is first, yes, it's expensive. Do I think it's as expensive as it should be. I think it could probably be tweaked up a little bit. I mean, for the power that it brings at its current state. Now in regards to kind of what Rum said about agents that can continuously punish an opper for being in that spot like Omen. I agree that's a great choice, but I don't want to have to feel like I have to pick an Omen on my team or else we lose. It's kind of the same way I feel about Sage right now, is that there needs to be more supports in the game so I don't feel like I have to always grab a Sage or have like a Reyna and Phoenix in place of a Sage. So, I mean, it's there needs to be something. I also think that there should be a little bit higher of a skill ceiling to use the op. Whether it be, the time to get that pinpoint accuracy whenever you aim down the sights be slightly longer. Because it just feels to me like there's too many instances where I'll see a Jet kind of full sprint, jump into the air, immediately like scope in and get the kill and immediately scope out, and it's all done in like half a second, not even.
Yeah.
So I mean, if there was a little bit more of a delay on that, I think it would feel better to sit there and say, look, if you're not playing as a sniper and watching a spot and holding a corner, it shouldn't be an aggro weapon. You shouldn't just be able to run around with it. It should be, if you're playing this, you're stationary, and that's the downside of you get that shot off, they know where you're at, and unless you go and reposition and take time to set up, you're kind of a sitting duck for, as we talked about before, a raised grenade trying to flush you out or something like that. And I don't want them to have to make changes to agents to play around the op. I don't want to see agents get changed or get messed with too much just because the ops,
Well,
overbearing.
I think it's a sense of balance if you have to adjust multiple pieces to make the whole game have a consistent feel to it, that it's operating as it should.
I would agree.
So you talked specifically about cost. So in this game, your maximum amount of money is 9,000, and the operator's 4,500. So even if you have max, it costs you half of your bank. And usually, when you are buying the operator, unless you're living 2 rounds with the operator, you're gonna net negative amounts of eco, unless you're just popping off and getting 3 or 4 Ks in those 2 rounds, which is a interesting thing to think about. So the direct comparison is obviously CS. CS, the operator is 4750, but your maximum amount of money, a lot of people don't know. The actual maximum you can have, quote unquote, is $65,000 in CS because it's an unsigned 16-bit integer, right? But on average in your game, you'll see a lot of teams with something like 20K, 22K on a couple of rounds up. And so it's such a different fractional cost. And I think this is because of the utility argument, which is why I don't think upping the cost may be the correct approach. Because in the game of CS, every team has 5 smoke grenades. They can have up to 5 frags. They can have up to 10 flashbangs. And in Valorant, you can have 2 Phoenix curveballs, maybe 2 Reyna Lears if you're playing double flash, or you can have up to a total of 5 smokes with 2 of them being reusable. Sometimes you can call what I call the half smokers, which are like Jet and Viper, and they're little kind of corner smokes or repositional smokes that they can do. So I'm in the camp that the operator is a little overtuned for the state that Riot has chosen to put utility in.
I would
I
agree.
think the smokes need to be either a little bit stronger or a little bit cheaper and feel more expendable for someone like Brimstone.
Right.
Maybe giving Brimstone like a fourth smoke. It might be something that buffs the support utility in order to obscure this operator. Maybe adding another flash character. I'd love to see a support-oriented flash character in the game. Something that could throw the flash as like the traditional quote-unquote flashbang, but it just have either like a restricted amount of time or like another frag grenade type character where it's like a traditional explosive that pushes the operator to at least lose its angle so you can reposition around it. Um, but I do think that Jet requires minor tweaks because of how she gets to play with the operator. So Jet gets a free weapon. I think it's every 6 kills is when you get your ultimate, or is it
Yes.
7?
6.
6? Yeah. So every 6 kills, you get a free weapon that recharges. That's pinpoint accurate in every situation in the game. And they've already talked about how they don't like midair combat a little bit, although that is Jet's whole character. So I can see the hesitancy to like touch the knife's accuracy in the air. But I'd be interested to see a little bit of a Jet tweak. I'd like to see her ult charge go to 7 so that she doesn't get free eco while she saves for an op and get basically like a free rifle slash shotgun every like 2 or 3 rounds, right? And then I'd like to see a little bit more lag on the dash so that you can punish Jet when she happens to miss a shot. because I think that's where the risk reward comes in as an operator player. So you have the highest advantage until you pull the trigger. And as soon as you pull the trigger, if you miss, most of the time you should be dead unless you're holding a passive enough angle that you can get out safely. And a lot of these angles that Jets are taking are basically like this quote unquote free peek where they get to avoid a trade because of the dash. And then by the time the enemy team can try to push up to counter the Jet moving away with the supposed end lag, she's already able to move out or smoke herself out for 8 seconds. And I think that's a little bit too much for an aggressive sniper role, if that makes sense. So I'd like to see a couple of those aspects kind of tweaked around the Jet to maybe bring the operator a little bit more back in the line. At least that's my 2 cents. I don't play the op. I tried it for a little while, but I couldn't handle Jet. Me and her did not get along, so I gave it up and I let Rums do it because he's better than me.
Which think about what you just said is, and it's funny because like you're like I tried the op, but I couldn't handle Jet. Jet shouldn't be the op. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be like, oh, I got to play Jet because I want to be the opper. Jet is very much like a high mobility. You're in and out and getting like in these fights and quickly getting out and escaping and putting damage on. Like that shouldn't be an opera. That should be like, oh, sniper. This toolkit says sniper.
Yeah. I want to hear Rum's thoughts though on the Jet idea that Jet's the problem.
I don't think Jet's the issue. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have someone else with the operator in hand and you take an angle, say Haven A long,
Sure.
you can still hold that angle prior to anybody peeking you just because of the way things are set up. You're going to get that defensive operator online well before anybody can attack you. And I don't think that's an agent issue. The problem is, or I see what you're saying, in that Jet can hold that angle, and she can hold the angle as soon as she gets pushed for a trade, say gets a kill, gets pushed for a trade, she can just dash away and essentially not get traded. But I think that gives even more value to the fact that you need to be using utility on those angles. Because I can tell you right now, when I get smoked out of one of those angles, and it's a correct smoke placement, which is not something we see a ton around silver, gold, platinum, if it's a correct smoke, there isn't anything I can do about it.
Yeah.
I have been completely shut down on days where I am feeling it. I am hitting every shot that I possibly can. And I have been completely shut down by an Omen that just knows where to put the smokes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's something that low ranks need to look up more is smoke placements.
Right. And so that's why I don't think that Jet is necessarily the issue. I think Jet is a very unique agent in that she has a very, very high skill cap, but not everybody can just pick up and play her. It takes time to learn her, but her skill cap is so high that at the pro level, she is able to put out insane numbers. If you get someone like Wardell or Tens or ACU, if you get any one of those three, she's going to do insane damage. And I think that's her design, though. And I think the rest of the game, it would be unfair to change the rest of the game just based off of how the top 10% are playing, because I think the rest of the 90% of the game, they're not experiencing the issues that we're seeing up at the pro level.
No, there are some pros that dislike the way that Jet can play with the operator. Specifically, I know Sabrosa's been really public about it.
But of course.
About how he dislikes the aggressive angles the sniper gets to take, which I think is the problem that I have. It's not so much when Jet's holding the defensive like Heaven from Haven, but it's the swinging around that lower corner to peek into Garden. And then if she misses, she's now immediately up long, and you have to make a decision from there.
I see the point, but I just attribute that to a lack of utility to flush the op.
It's just, it becomes more of a guessing game about 6 positions the op can play on a site rather than like 3 or 4 that the operator could play, which I think a lot of people might need some adjustment time coming from CS where they're like designated operator locations, or not op locations, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the oppers in CS will play specific areas of a zone because they know that it's safe and they know they can retreat or they can avoid utility coming through and then have to rehandle where they're going, which is why the ops a little bit more of an aggressive weapon in CS with its things like ADS. It has twice the shots, that kind of thing. So
Here's the thing that I think about the op too when we're sitting there saying the six positions that he can play or something like that is that really and maybe it's not such a problem in higher elos, but certainly where I'm at, you're saying six positions. Well, chances are there could be three of those positions held by ops. You know what I mean? Like when you're developing a game like this, you kind of want this like a team to say, okay, let's have a well-rounded set of guns or set of equipment. So maybe you'll sit there and say, okay, I'm going to have two rifles, a shotgun, an op, and something else. That way we can handle any kind of situation that comes to us. But it should never be, or it should be a sign that something is wrong if a team says, let's go four ops. Yeah, that's fine. That's all we need, and you're taking away kind of the other play. It's something that's saying, okay, this needs to be tweaked somehow. That should not be a viable option.
I know what you're talking about. In bronze and iron, should you have a Smurf or someone who's slightly lower rated than they should be, and they know how to use the operator, it can be very oppressive for people who don't have the mechanics per se to punish the operator should they miss, or to know, okay, well, we've pushed A twice and they've opted us from that angle, we should rotate over, or we should fake with a smoke, and add some of the sprinkle in some more of the quote unquote advanced tactics. And I think that might just be like a ranked line, because if you designate the game and design it in a way that anyone can punish a certain weapon, it becomes less of a skill oriented game and more of a latency or a luck thing. But I get where you're coming from. If there's a system in place where you need four snipers to be the optimal team comp, then yes, there's an operator problem, and that would require adjustments. I think if you run into those games, it's an extremity or like an outlier,
Yeah, I'm not saying it
and the
happens
most you
every
see is
game, but
the most you see is like the double operator play, which is what we're seeing right now on things
yeah,
like Ascent.
yeah, that's much
Sometimes
much
you'll
more
see it on
common.
Haven, which I think might just be a little bit to the map design. I really dislike it. I think that the game should be in a state where there's only one operator that has to choose a lane. Otherwise, you can cover 2/3 of the map, and with this one-shot weapon that you can't peek or challenge because of the way the angles are set up. You know, and I think that that's something that we might need to look at, is maybe there needs to be an extra corner, the length on walls need to be readjusted on like Ascent, where the double op is super prevalent and kind of oppressive in the tier 1.5, low tier 1 of Valorant going on right now, that I've kind of seen play in some of the tournaments going on, some of the Ignition series. You see the strategy come out. So I would like to see them tweak first the utility before actually touching the weapon, and I think that might help the game a lot, and people feel a little bit more less jaded towards the operator play. But specifically talking about the pro stuff kind of going on. Yeah, so this week we have our Run It Back. It's our esports section where I talk about the primary results and stuff that's gone on over the past weekend, primarily with the Ignition series. That's our pro play that we're seeing right now. Specifically, there are two events that I want to talk about. The two main events. There's one EU, one NA that went on. I personally got to watch a large portion of the Allied event. I set some time aside, got to watch the VODs and some highlight reels, and kind of got to stick to the content a little bit. I missed the Pittsburgh Night Gauntlet, which makes me sad because it looked like a really good tournament that was coming up. But I got more time during the weekend, so I just watched the Allied Odyssey a lot more. So to start with, we have the Pittsburgh Night. It ended up coming down to TSM versus Gen G. Specifically, TSM came from losers. So Gen G started with a map up, and TSM 2-0'd Gen G 13-9 both maps to win that tournament. And it was after I think they had lost initially to go down into this lower bracket where they had been almost cratered. Like I think they lost 13-8 or something like that, 13-9. And kind of I watched a demoralized TSM for the first time, just like bounce back like it was nothing, and kind of come back through this tournament. And so TSM and Gen G had some really good games going on, but I think it further reinforced this idea that TSM is the not undisputed top end of NA Valorant going on right now, but is at least like in my mind tied with Sentinels. I think both of them are they're 1-1 against each other. They have a slugfest every time they play. They go back and forth, and any other team that comes up against them is usually not hitting double digits in rounds when they play each other.
Right. I personally love the TSM Sentinels rivalry. It's such a joy to watch them whenever they play together.
Yeah, all the overtimes is just super ridiculous. Um, I wanted to spend more time. So the Pittsburgh Night Finals that unstreamed for most of the tournament only had one stream coverage day. So there's some highlight reels and some videos you can kind of check out and watch to get the feel of what exactly was going on. But there wasn't a lot of coverage to specifically talk about up until the grand finals. Um, I want to spend more time on the EU event, which is the Allied Esports Odyssey event that they did. So this had the newly formed Liquid, or not newly formed, but newly acquired team Liquid, which were Fish 123. That's going to be your Scream, Eccles, and Link. Those guys that have been kind of running the EU scene outside of G2. So for the Allied Esports Odyssey event, we had G2, Fun Plus Phoenix, Team Liquid, which is the newly acquired Fish 123, Ninjas and Pajamas is the last team rounding out this kind of tournament going on. And man, this tournament, dude, this tournament was nuts to watch. And primarily, I think this is because of their format. They did groups in what I think is the best way that you can do groups for this game because the games run 35 to 40 minutes. So with their group system, the way they played it is they played groups over the course of 3 days, and it was a best of two. So you could split the series, and they mainly focused on round differential between teams to in order like to enable their group rankings to go out of the round robin, which I really liked. It's similar and it's kind of akin to the LCS system where they really focus on like things like map count or round count for the LCS and getting those stats to really break it down on which team should be placed where for seeding. And I think that gives a really accurate point for the playoffs. But man, did they screw up playoffs, dude. All right, you ready for this? Best of two groups, right? Playoffs were best of one up until grand finals. And then they played a double elimination bracket. So if you lost in the upper one, then you had a second match in the lower bracket, and you got to progress forward. But best of one just
Like,
felt
who
so
thinks
bad.
that's a good idea? I mean, it's not like this is the first esports like scene or anything like that where
I know they're getting a lot of freedom from Riot to kind of designate their structure. I don't think there's a world where best of one is the best idea for playoffs. You would have been better off squeezing groups into 2 days, spreading your playoffs into 2 days, and doing best of two and then best of three. I think a minimum your playoffs need to be best of three in this game. There's a little too much variance still. There's still too much learning. You need at least the best of three for the map count for it to really feel like a good set. Like feel like somebody really deserved their win.
Yeah, I would agree. There's too many opportunities where you can get a dink and a dunk and then you win the round, win the game. I think one match set is not nearly enough to determine whose skill is better.
I do like the way they spread their event out though. They spread it out over 4 days. I think 3 days for like big main events is kind of the minimum we need to be shooting for the other Ignition series. I know they're avid listeners of the podcast already, so taking this advice, they don't even have to pay me for it, but I think you need at least three. Um, I was a TO for the FGC for a long time, organizing tournaments and events in the Southeast for things like Smash, Street Fighter, and seeing grueling 16-hour days come out of very mentally challenging games, like mentally taxing games, is just it's ruthless, man. There's no way these guys need to be playing best of threes all day for 2 days through 4 group matches. It's just not good for the player's health, and I think we need to be advocating for a little bit more of a healthy schedule, especially in this online environment that we're currently in with no lands. It's perfectly fine to do over 3 days.
You wouldn't ask a professional football player to play football for 16 hours straight. Not, yeah, I'm not going to say that the physical fatigue of football is going to equate to that of esports because it's not. But esports is more mental, it's more in your head. You have eye strain, you have all kinds of problems that are very specifically tailored to esports. So I don't think having somebody play for 16 hours a day is viable.
No, and I've played competitive baseball. I played competitive baseball for like 12 years year round. I've played 3 games in a day, and it's been awful. But I've never been more tired than after playing 8 matches in a day for like a COD event, or for a pro am, or all kinds of stuff. It's a different kind of
it's nonstop
stress.
mental strain too. You know what I mean? Like it's people sit there and say, "Oh, you're just sitting down. It can't be that hard. You're just playing." But it's the calculations that you're kind of doing in your head of every possible scenario that could pop up that you have to be ready for and aware of. It eventually just kind of breaks you down.
Yeah, it's not ideal, that's for sure. But that was a very good. And speaking of strain, I don't know if you guys heard David P. He's a player for G2. His father actually passed during, I think it was day one of that tournament, and he missed day one. He took the time out. G2 lost the match that they were playing. Obviously, they were playing 4v5, which in any professional setting is just almost just a wash. And he came back day two and just continue to overperform that he's done since he started. Like he came back, carried him and other people's weight. He popped off in a couple games. He had great clutches. He got a couple 1v2s, a 1v3. Man just was wild performing for his father. Like you could see it in his. You didn't even have to watch, but you could just see it in. He had the fire going, and it was incredible. Yeah.
It's heartwarming, man.
So
I will also say, if we're gonna throw out I don't know if you guys heard this thing, but did you guys just see Dignitas just made a Valorant team?
yeah, that's true. Dignitas did. They just picked up, I believe it was Homeless.
Homeless, yeah.
So no longer Homeless. Yeah, they picked up a 4-person roster because Lasky got dropped. They needed a jet operator. To tie into the compensation. They wanted specifically a jet operator to come onto the roster. So open slot. If Rom's gonna get good, he can play for Dignitas. So going into this group stage, to round out kind of what I'm talking about with this Allied Esports, our ending group stages was Liquid, FunPlus, G2, NIP, BBL, and then Vodafone, the Giants. That was the other team that I couldn't think of because they went 0 and they drew 3 matches and lost 2. I wasn't really impressed with what they were doing, but the playoffs, man, this is where it kind of got exciting. So the first match was Liquid versus NIP. 13-7 Liquid's favor on map 1. They, I think, traded, if I remember correctly. No, they got 2. Okay, so NIP did get 2 by, I think, Liquid to start off with. But Team Liquid took it over NIP and then had to face G2 in the semifinals. But G2 made it to the semifinals over the back of a overtime win against Fun Plus Phoenix, which is a newer roster coming out of China. And man, Fun Plus Phoenix, they shocked me in this game. They blew me away with how they were playing. It was absolutely phenomenal with how they performed. So I hadn't heard of most of these guys. I don't keep up with a lot of the Chinese FPS scene. Occasionally I will for stuff like MOBAs, League of Legends, that kind of thing. But all of these guys, man, they just surprised me. It's definitely a team to watch out for as far as international competition goes in. Liquid lost to G2 in the semis. Again, G2, man, if you weren't pulling for them, you got no heart, man. If you weren't pulling for G2 in this tournament, and FunPlus came back up from the bottom, upsetting Team Liquid 13-11. Which, if you guys can go watch the VOD, that was a great match. And then G2 took it in 2 maps over FunPlus Phoenix in the best of 3, 13-5 and 13-9, just showing complete dominance on why they have an argument to be the best team in the world currently. That was a great all in all tournament. It was all the Allied VODs. You guys need to go and check it out if you can. So the other tournament was Pittsburgh Knights Invitational. I did not get to watch a ton of this, but I have some data to go over. It was 4 groups. There are 16 teams. Moving out of groups was TSM and Homeless, which is now Dignitas. Envy, which is also a newly formed team. Immortals, Genji, Renegades, Cloud9 topped a group in this tournament, which is very exciting. They're finding the groove. And then the newly formed Complexity made it out. Group D was an interesting showing. This is the last group that I mentioned. So Cloud9 made it out 3-0, and every other team was 1-2, and they had to make it out off of round differentials. So very
Wow.
back and forth kind of back and forth kind of a game. So specifically, Complexity is the Frisco and XP3 team made up of some older CS pros and I think some Apex players, if I remember correctly. And then going into the playoffs, they had a traditional double elimination bracket where I think they played best of 1 as well with a map differential going into the finals, which is TSM coming back. But TSM lost to Genji in the upper bracket final and then came back to sweep them the next 2 matches for the grand final, which is, I think, really kind of neat. But Cloud9, man, they're the team that I want to talk about for the Pittsburgh Knights tournament. We all know TSM, we know Genji, right? You need to go watch this Cloud9 roster they finally put together.
I very much want Cloud9 to succeed. They have been one of my favorite teams in all esports for a long time. And I really think that they have a good core roster. They just need to find their groove, get little things going, and then I think they'll be a powerhouse.
For sure. The Cloud9 roster, they finally picked up their last member, which we all kind of thought we knew who it was. It was Vice. So you have Tens, Relics, Mitch, Shinobi, and Vice. And they've finally got some practice in. They got some hours. They were popping, man. They were showboating this entire tournament. Having really strong performances. They went into overtime against Team Envy. That was kind of their closest match, and everything else was pretty good round differentials for their wins. They did lose to Immortals, and the beginning of the upper bracket, and then they lost a newly invigorated TSM in the losers bracket, which I don't think I'd want to face TSM in the losers bracket, man. They look very, very scary. So that's all. That's really all I've got for results. One thing I did notice was the smoke and support play in these tournaments changed in these kind of games. So a lot of double smoke started to come out, where people were playing Brim and Omen to kind of hit that smoke quota for the operators, which I think is a very smart decision for pro level play. I don't know if it's something I'd want to adapt into my ranked play. I think that sacrificing a lot of this kind of aggression by not taking as many duelists into a match, or not taking things like Reyna or Phoenix, some of these kind of pop flashers, or like a Raze, I think you're sacrificing too much. And a lot of these pro teams are now rotating off of the Sage and playing double intel, double smoke, and then a fragger, because there's less poke coming out of the pro team games. There's more playing for pick and then rotating, and it's playing more off of a game knowledge than it is damage. So the heal is less important up there. I think Sage is still a little bit more important in ranked play and unorganized five stacks.
I'd agree. I mean, chances are in pro play too, if you're getting hit, you're going down. You know what I mean? It's they're much less likely to just break through your shields and give Sage an opportunity to heal. They're going to capitalize on every shot that they take. So
Yeah, I think Scream has something like a 50 or 60% headshot ratio. It's absurd. So I really like that. Other than that, we do have some news in our Clutcher Kick segment today. We've got some esport news coming out of Valorant. Um, this is kind of cool. T1 Skadoodle, the legendary NACS Opper, is stepping down from T1's starting 5 roster in order to expand his character pool. I really, really applaud this decision. I think this is really mature coming from Skadoodle. He's main Sage since kind of the game's come out, and he plays the whole T1 roster plays kind of passive. And I think they're getting punished for it. I think that they're having Braxton play too passive of a character and Cypher, and I think by not trying to use a Jet or a more aggressive fragger to their advantage for the op position is a detriment to their whole game plan. They're playing the game smart. They're playing with good rotations. They're playing with good knowledge, good predictions, but they can't capitalize on it because of their hero pool that they have access to currently. So I think that's kind of cool. We talked about Lasky. He got booted from Homeless, which is now Dignitas. And then our big piece of news. I'm so excited. This is my favorite team, and I'm so excited. Uh, my man, Hiko, on 100 Thieves, just got the best teammate he could ask for. And 100 Thieves signed Nitro. Okay, Smithel, you haven't kept up with a lot of CS esports, right? You're kind of new to the whole competitive TAC FPS thing.
yeah, no, I played nothing. Like the only esports I came from is kind of Here's the Storm, which is kind of why I'm excited about Psalm being on Dignitas because he came from Huts. So I mean,
Nitro Nitro is a living NA prodigy
Yes.
for CS. This man is a god, and he is one of the most gifted IGLs and game leaders that NACS has ever seen, and I'd argue that CS has seen in a very long time. He is just so intelligent with how he chooses and picks his strategies that this is a massive pickup for 100
I
Thieves. And
love this pickup. Love it.
if Nitro and Hiko get access, like some say in the roster going forward, we're in for a treat, man. It's gonna be absolutely
And
nuts.
Hiko has said on stream that he is not the judge, jury, executioner on who gets to be on the 100 Thieves roster, but he has stated that 100 Thieves is giving him a lot of say as opposed to who fills those remaining 3 slots. Because I don't know if we mentioned it, but 100 Thieves dropped all of their PUBG players on the Valorant roster. So it is currently, right now, it is Hiko and it is Nitro. And there is 3 other spots that are just ripe for the take.
Something interesting that this poses to me is I think this game, because it's hit the correct notion of the esports right off the bat, right? It's hit the right amount of community input, the amount of player interest, the amount of hype that's built up. I think that Valorant's going to really put kind of a lean on tier 1.5 and below CSGO. So CS has been this monolith for a long time, and I'm not saying CS is going somewhere. I'm not saying it's going to die. I'm not saying that ESEA or anything like that is going away. But I think anyone who's not playing in the like top 15 teams is looking at Valorant with some dollar signs in their eyes. ESPN, yeah, ESPN reported Nitro signed for something like 250 or $300,000 a year for this initial 100 Thieves contract, and we don't even have like an official league set up. We don't have an official major system set up. It's just some pug tournaments that Riot decides to throw together with the Ignition series, and I think that speaks volumes up to the future of this esport. That orgs are trying so hard to get in so early, and I think it's because of the franchise model. We're seeing this mainstream media esports kind of coming around, and I think Valorant's in a very good position to take hold of this franchise league as a public eye esport. It's really easy to watch and understand, and seeing big name and stable organizations like TSM, Cloud9, 100 Thieves, G2, Liquid stepping in so early is a good sign for our
Oh,
esport that's going on.
if you talk even like the state of esports where Valorant is concerned, you look at the FaZe Invitational, and I think they peaked at 170,000 viewers for the grand finals, and 121,000 viewers was like average. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it's great. I mean, they actually break it down by like. You could look up the team and see the total hours watched by each team.
Yeah,
I think something
that's
like
just cool. That's also pretty cool.
yeah, like Sentinels at something like 963,000 hours combined. I mean, it for a new game in terms like compared to like CS:GO and Rainbow Six and things like that. That's amazing.
It's
Figures.
2 months. It's been almost 3 months after release.
Exactly, dude. It's absurd.
It's unreal. It's unreal. I mean, it's definitely something that like you said, if you're a team and you're not sitting there consistently, top 3, top 10, whatever the case may be, this is a chance. This is a chance to kind of get in at the beginning, make a name for yourself, and really take off. And I think these teams are smart to do so.
Right. And speaking from the business perspective and looking at this investment, if you as a player, even if if you're not playing the top end of CS, if you're not playing the top end of any other FPS, and you're not streaming or not trying to put out your content, your marketability, you're not going to get signed by these orgs. These orgs are looking to make money back and to use you as an advertisement kind of pedestal while representing you and giving you an opportunity to compete. And I think that that's something a lot of people aren't using to their advantage, which is exciting. I think that we're seeing some a lot of plays. So I want to talk about, you guys don't know a lot of the up and coming players, right? But I have a couple of players I think in mind for this 100 Thieves roster with some news that's come around. I want to know who you think should be signed to this 100 Thieves roster, because Nade Shot's very clearly writing some large checks.
If they could afford it, pick up Shroud.
Yeah, no, for sure. He actually kind of mentioned going pro for this game, and please, Hiko Shroud Nitro, dude.
Can you imagine that core 3?
It'd be great.
I like your opening of if they can afford it. I mean,
well, I don't even know if Shroud would ask a lot of money. He just made $30 million off of his Mixer deal.
He did.
He cashed out.
He did.
So he made 30 million. He came back from Twitch, probably made a cool, 50 or 60 from that first 3 days of streaming. He might just be like, yeah, sure, sign me for 90 and let me just play.
But think about it like that, is if he's making 50, 60, in a week or 3 weeks, or whatever the case may be, it's one of those things for him to sign up and commit to 16 hours in scrims and not being able to stream. It's walking away from that daily rate, that he knows he can get.
Well, I don't think his stream schedule gets impacted though, because Hiko streams 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and still makes his scrims. And I understand, Shroud has a wife, he's got a life, he may not want to commit that extra time to video games, but he said, he misses competing. He's interested in Valorant, and if they could tweak a couple things, he'd go pro if he had the right opportunity. I think this could be a right opportunity. This is my foul ball left field call. But
I'd love to see him more of like a caster for tournaments or something like that.
I think he'd be cool as an analyst for sure. My main thought, what if they pick up Lasky that just got dropped from Homeless? Lasky's been performing pretty well. His operator play is good, but he doesn't play aggressive ops, right? But they have really good comms. He's a former CS veteran and a professional player. You know, he's got a great IGL and Nitro that he could come into. They could train him up on the Jet a little bit if he's interested in playing it, or just play the passive operator role. I think they could do it a little bit better than T1 with that as a third member, especially with a rifler like Hiko playing the kind of aggressive support. He's been playing a lot of Omen
A
recently,
lot of Omen, yeah.
right? And he's so intelligent about the game that him on Omen or Cypher, I think, is a very large pickup. I think that could be an interesting setup. I know Asu has said that
Hmm.
he's not going pro, but
We'll
I'd be
see.
if I was 100 Thieves, I'd be sliding into some DMs, okay?
Absolutely.
Because he is
I
arguably
mean, it's
like the
worth
third best
exploring.
Jet player I've seen. You have like Mixwell 10s and then this guy.
You have Wardell, you
Oh yeah, and
have
Wardell. Sorry, I forgot Wardell. So he's like the fourth best
you
that I've
have
seen.
Wardell, you have Tens, and you have ACU. And the competition between the three of them to tell who is the best, it is close. It's a close
Yeah,
race.
I don't know. He's good, and he's played professional games before. He played tier two CS for a long time in ESEA and Face It, and then he moved to Apex where he you know ran the entire circuit for a long time with the NRG squad. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if he decided to step up and play with his 100 Thieves roster, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he chose not to as well. I think Lasky could be an interesting thing to look at though, because they desperately need an opera to fill in since Venerated decided to step down as well and go with the PUBG guys, which makes me sad because I really liked Venerated. I think that he should have stayed on that roster. As for your boy Dre and Valiate, you guys got to step it up. You guys were sandbagging a lot in those professional tournaments, man. That's kind of the end of that 100 Thieves. Man, that potential there. Oh, goosebumps, goosebumps.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's gonna be great.
Be fun to see
Uh,
what's up.
yeah, and last little bit of tidbit that we got for our esports noon. C9 actually picked up a second roster. They're gonna be fielding a Korean roster for Valorant. Specifically, they signed some old Overwatch League pros from Seal Dynasty and I believe Huangzhou. I don't remember their mascot, but it's one of those. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but it's something like that. I think it's the Spark. That's what it is. The pink team. Yeah, it's the Spark and the Dynasty. They picked them up for Korea, and that should be kind of cool. Haven't heard anything from Korea as far as this game goes. I know Japan's got a pretty good scene, and two really powerhouse teams that I'm keeping an eye on for a later date for us to talk about for the Asian scene. But I could see Korea stepping up. They've dominated Overwatch for a long time. I think they could transition in this game
They
kind of well.
they dominate a lot of esports a lot
They do. It's just enveloped into
consistently.
their culture, man.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for years. But that's kind of all I have on my notes, guys, for our main segments of today as far as our
Let's
news.
yeah, let's transition into talking about some news other than Valorant, shall we?
Let's talk about video games, guys. Let's talk about some personal projects, man. What outside of Valorant have you guys been looking into this week? What's been on your radar? Let me know. Rums, what you got going, man?
What's interesting to me, being a pre-orderer of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it was very interesting to see that I woke up one morning, I think it was the 14th, and I saw that the Valhalla creative director, Ashraf Ishmael, had been fired, terminated. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure where Ubisoft is going to go. The allegation is that he had been in contact with some consumers, had lied about his marital status, and it's just a whole mess. So Ubisoft hired an independent investigator, and the investigator didn't release comment, but they said that they had found enough evidence that Ashraf should be fired.
Yeah, that's a no go. Lying, that's a no go, especially in big corporate, dude. That's oof. I hope that doesn't impact the game. Like, I hope that doesn't slow it down. I don't know if it's been finished already or not.
Yeah, I just hope that the majority of it is done. I know that they were scheduled for a fall release, so if you schedule and you announce a fall release early in the year, you have to be pretty dang close to finish to be able to say some of that confidently. So that's the first thing on my radar. Second thing, which is kind of old and dated news, a couple weeks ago, but I found it pertinent to mention it because I just found out the other day. Method and other top World of Warcraft guilds were found using real money for their world first races.
Oh yeah, I heard about this. This was the gold loaning, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
so
no bueno. I got banned. I got banned in early World of Warcraft for RMT.
It's your dirty gold seller.
they had purchased in excess of somewhere around 75 million gold in real money so that they could buy BOEs for their world first races. Yeah. Yeah, Method has taken quite a dramatic downturn.
That might explain. I heard some whispers that a lot of the people in Method were leaving Method
Yes.
and no longer
Method is
raiding and
gone.
investing with them. So yeah,
Method is gone. So they disbanded after a scandal on one of their players. One of their players was alleged with sexual misconduct,
oof,
and
that's a
there
big
had
yikes.
been some evidence of management covering it up and
Oh,
everybody
that's
knowing and
even
turning
bigger
a blind
yikes.
eye. So
Why? Why?
Method is no more. No more. I will say that the other top WoW guilds using RMT does not include Complexity Limit, who is the world first for Nyalotha. So they did loan some money from Gallywix. Gallywix is a huge boosting community, or was a huge boosting community. They had loaned a similar amount of gold from Gallywix, but they ended up paying it all back by providing boosts to the community for Gallywix. So they had
Well, at least they
offered
did
their
it right.
services as boosters in exchange for some money.
They
So
did it right.
loan.
And that's how you're gonna if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it right.
It's
So
true.
I hear that for sure. Smithel, what's been on your radar, boss? I know you play some other competitive games. What's going on?
So I do, but so I mean, it's the basically the big things that have been kind of popping up, especially as of recently, are obviously the Legends of Runeterra. The new sets coming out for that, I
Yeah,
believe,
you're
on the
big into that game.
26th. I am. Although recently I've just been playing labs. I gave up on ladder because I hate the current meta. But yeah, I mean, they basically announced the new region and have previewed a couple of the champs like Trundle, Leona, Lulu, Tarek, Nocturne. I believe are the only
That's a
ones so
lot.
far. Yeah, I mean, I think they're putting out, is it 8 champions or something like that? It's they're releasing a small handful now, and then like every other month they're
That's
putting
a
out a
big
couple
expansion.
more. Yeah, it's the big one, but they're putting out I think like 80 cards or something now.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, a couple of new cool keywords. Definitely looking forward to that. Also, keeping it in the realm of Riot. If you listen to video game music at all, they have that like digital K-pop band KDA that had a song back for Worlds. What was it in 2017?
Yeah, 16 or
And
17.
yeah, and they're releasing a new one from the same like the band next week as well.
A lot of people's gateway to K-pop.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so it's very much. I expect that will be the theme for this year's Worlds, or not the theme, but maybe sponsored there. Also, I got a Stadia controller not too long ago. I don't know if anybody plays any of the cloud-based gaming stuff, but it's actually come quite a ways. It's pretty good, and as somebody with like kids and shit, it's kind of nice just to be able to pick up a controller and play awesome games on my phone that way. But yeah, so I mean, they just talked a little bit about some early access launch coming to Stadia and Steam for Baldur's Gate 3, which I am super excited about. That'll be
Yes,
September.
I am very excited. Smithel, we'll have to sit down and play that together on stream or something, man, because I'm super
Yes.
excited for it.
Yes, you have to
Dude,
definitely do that. That's cool.
Dude, DOS 2 is still one of my favorite like RPG games of all times.
Absolutely.
Steam, I have it on my Switch, I have it everywhere. It's great.
Cool. On my radar, I'm gonna start off also with some interesting, controversial news. Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, the game to kill all games a few years back, has filed lawsuits against Apple and Google.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so Apple and Google, if you don't know, on their app stores, should you make microtransactional purchases, they charge a fee on the top of which you're paying the gaming company. So if you're gonna give Epic $10, then Google might still like 3 off the top.
Yeah, I think it's
That's
30%.
yeah, that's their cut. Apple is a similar rate. And so to combat this, Epic raised their or lowered their prices outside of Apple and Google's marketplaces for them to download the app elsewhere and get cheaper prices for V-Bucks. And in response, Apple and Google booted Fortnite off of their app store and just completely removed it.
Wow.
I
Yeah,
mean, maybe this is me being a grumpy old man, but good. I mean, if you're gonna break the terms and contracts that you signed up for,
but I
and
don't know
to
if
try
we
to get
don't
more
know
money,
if that's a break in terms of contracts because they filed a lawsuit for what was it? It's like just I think it was like discrimination or like or oppressive some kind of something about their microtransactional rates and like hurting the developers. It's I don't know. They filed long-winded lawsuits against both of them, and which
yeah.
resulted in them getting
I,
removed.
I'm no lawyer, but I mean, from what I saw in the contract, I mean, I should have pulled it up to have it above, but I mean, the terms were pretty well cleared up, and I believe if you don't agree with them, don't sign into them at the beginning. But think about this: is how much more money did Fortnite make from going into app develop or going like mobile as opposed to just PC? That you can't sit there and say, "Looky, we broadened our audience and we're making billions of dollars now, and now we're going to complain now that people are hooked." No, screw it. If you didn't like those terms, argue them at the beginning.
I don't know. I think what they're specifically arguing is that them changing their prices outside of Apple and Google's platform is not grounds enough to be removed from the App Store. I think specifically what's the lawsuits like in retaliation for, but like I'm not a lawyer, I don't know what legal grounds they have to stand on, but I believe that's what happened. I think this shows a pretty big impact on the mobile side of gaming. I don't play mobile games. I can't stick to any of them. None of them hook me, and most of them are gotcha games. But I wonder if this has an impact on the quote unquote mobile gaming scene that people are trying to step into. But it's interesting nonetheless to see Epic Games try to like fight for mobile developer rights as they put it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and then lastly, I'm a huge comic book fan. I love superheroes. Gotham Knights is the next series in the Arkham series for Batman, and at the upcoming DC fandom, they're supposed to be releasing the reveal trailer for Gotham Knights, which is supposedly this open world Nemesis systemed Batman game to come out,
Hmm.
involving the Batman family, where you get to play multiple iterations of like Batman, Batwoman, all of the kind of the figureheads in that series, which
Bring me
has me really
Batman
excited.
Beyond.
Yeah, it has me really excited because that's a really fun series if you've never played them, and you should if you got time for single player games.
I started with Arkham Asylum way back when, and that game was like, it was it, man. I was like 12, 13, 14 at the time when I started playing it, and it was insane. I loved it.
I think that's all I got for the week. As long as if I think have you guys got anything else to add?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing super
All
newsworthy.
right. Well, I think that is our inaugural episode of the podcast, episode 1.
I think that counts it, man.
Yeah, I
That
hope
works.
I hope everybody listening enjoyed themselves, had a great time. We had a great time talking to you guys, as always. If you need any kind of feedback, any kind of questions, any kind of future topics you want to see us talk about, feel free to join the Discord. Should be linked in the description down below on the YouTube, or you can find it on our Twitter page, twitter.com/one-tap-cast, all one word. And of course, you can find me, Solemn, on Twitch and Twitter at SolemnFPS. And Smith, where can our viewers find you?
Best place to get a hold of me, guys, is obviously first our Discord because I'm on there every day chatting it up. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Smithel Gaming. Also, twitch.tv/Smithel. If you want to watch Saturday nights, I do D&D with a group of other fellow old men and dads. We're getting ready, hopefully, to get wrapping up on our current campaigner module that we're playing, and going to be starting some homebrew stuff here maybe in a month or so. So it'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
And Rums, where can they find the one and the only actual Rums?
Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and the Discord, all at Actual Rums. RUMZ, all one word.
All right, and I think that about wraps it up. Everybody, thanks for listening. Follow the show at One Tap Podcast or One Tap Gaming Podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, soon to be Apple Podcast, Google, and I believe Pandora. All in the upcoming weeks should be coming out to fruition. And as always, you can find us on YouTube at One Tap Gaming Podcast. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening, everybody.